can I use this in some way, shape, or form to propel me to, where I need to go, right? Like there's this saying in circles where it's like rock bottom's only as deep as you dig it, and you can keep digging, but there's always a moment in every recovery story where it's like that was the bottom.
Thanks so much for listening to No Lions Here with me, Big Panda. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to No Lions Here. My name is Big Panda, and I'm a recovering sex addict. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this show, this episode, Begin Again Institute. Their description, all their information will be down in the bio. Definitely go check them out. Life-changing program that totally changed my life. And speaking of BAI, with me today on the show is Nate Geyer, CSAT therapist at Begin Again Institute. Nate and I go back to 2021. This is Nate's third time on the show. He was my personal therapist when I was there, and always a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much. Welcome back, Nate.
Thanks for having me back, man. I really like your platform, and I believe in what you've done with the show, and like it's so neat to see the transformation over the time. And I'm always grateful to be on and share, my experience and wisdom with you and the listeners, and sort of sharing that journey of recovery. It's such a community to be a part of, and like to see you take it where you have, man, and like to be a part of your journey. Like it's such a neat experience. So I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, man. I love having you on, man. Because in thinking back on it now, man, like, you saw me at probably my lowest spot. 3 years ago. I was thinking about that the other day, just like looking back on it now, because it doesn't seem that long ago, but it seems like a long time ago. And just looking back on my life, like, where am I at now? What am I doing now? What does my life look like? Looks so much different than that February 2021, checking into Begin Again Institute because I had a sex addiction. And, oh my gosh, I have no idea what my life is going to look like or where I'm going to go. And, hung up on wanting a relationship back, and then fast forward to now, to where it's like, man, like getting ready to go work in the industry and working on the platform. So like, yeah, man, it's been a journey, and I'm just so grateful that you've been a part of my journey as well.
Thanks, man. Thanks for saying that. 'Cause, I remember you walking through the door, brother, and it's, something that's really special is to be able to help guys get from that point where you are at, and like be a part of that story, like a rock bottom. I know that maybe you're not saying that it was a rock bottom, but like that was a moment in my life where I could see back and be like, oh, this is a very, very painful moment in my experience. Can I use this in some way, shape, or form to propel me to, where I need to go, right? Like there's this saying in circles where it's like rock bottom's only as deep as you dig it, and you can keep digging, but there's always a moment in every recovery story where it's like that was the bottom, you know. And then as you move forward in time and you continue to heal, you use that rock bottom as like a leverage point or like a measuring stick, and to look back and be like, that's where I was, I can look into the hole and see where I was, and like all the experience that has led me out of that place. It's like it's powerful. It's a powerful memento, to be a part of, man. And just to look back, and I always have this idea of like measuring sticks, where it's like, the parents will mark their kids' growth on like a door frame, right? But the rock bottom is the start of that growth process, and I'm just so happy I could be there for you, man. I really am.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up measuring sticks. Like, looking back now, I can totally see the marks on the wall going up and up,
Yeah.
right? And like, but early on, because I remember early on, like trying to look at those things, and like it was so hard to see those things early on. And I mean, I'm not surprised at that. Like you're in the middle of some shit, shit just dropped on your head, your whole world's kind of crumbling down. Like, yeah, nothing is gonna look like any amount of measurement looking
Hmm.
back at it until and that's one of the things about the program is just time,
Oof.
which I
Time
don't
is a
like that answer.
No, I was kind of feeling that too. Like time is always like a real mess sometimes, man. But like I don't know about like as we get older, I really do think that like we can use time to more of an advantage. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just talking about this with one of my clients where it was like, you know, at age 7, like getting through your school day is like horrible, you know, and you're just like watching the clock go by and it feels like an eternity. But now, you know, as adults, we perceive time differently, you know, and like time is actually quite short in the grand
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things. But I think once we get out of that midbrain place, you know, you're talking about like the dysregulation and like, you know, the chaos of addiction that really just roots us in midbrain activity. Like we get out of that place, our frontal lobes start to turn on and we start to perceive things differently, you know, and
Yeah.
like our lives start to follow a trajectory through the frontal lobe more and more as the midbrain sort of becomes not under our control per se, but like we can regulate it the more and more we stay upstairs in our smart brain, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that you used the word trajectory there. I remember in being at BAI in the group room, and you guys were talking about, like, hey, your life is a trajectory, right? You're on this path. And if you just vary it by one half of a degree over time, that's not going to look like much at first, but then all of a sudden
Mm,
over time you start really going in and like, and yeah, that's, I can relate that to like my very first getting into recovery, like trying to make those little changes, and like not much is changing. I'm still feeling all this pain and all this hurt. And now 3 years later, I'm looking back going, oh wow, like yeah, there really has been a big separation. Now, doesn't mean I have a perfect program, doesn't mean I live a perfect
mhm,
life, doesn't mean that things aren't messy. Like today, I don't know, I was struggling with some urges today.
mm,
And I know that that's part of the game, but I've got tools that, like, I don't have to act on those. um but yeah, that the trajectory.
it's sort of the trajectory is like life on life's terms, man, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And like we'll never have all the answers. We'll never be perfect on that. It's about the confidence that we develop in recovery to use our awareness to create better choices, you know? And like if we encounter urges or triggers through our day to day, it's like I'm aware of what's happening inside of me, you know, and I have a choice on how to deal with that. Like in active addiction, that midbrain structures and like all that dopamine sort of wrapped around all that pushes us along a different trajectory, you know, and we feel like we just can't get off. We don't have the tools to get off that path. But like through recovery, through therapy, really, man, is like you start to realize I am the pilot of this ship. Like my body is a ship and I can read my gauges, you know, and I can take note of like where my levels are and be like, you know what? Dink, dink, dink on that gauge. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. So let me course correct here. Let me go starboard on this because I don't like the path that I'm on. And I finally get that decision. You know, like addiction is rooted really in a lack of choice.
Mm.
Like we'll always have choice, but the addiction makes the choice for us too often. And then we just keep falling down the stairs. And recovery really gives us that ability to be the captain of the ship again, you know?
Yeah.
It's a powerful, powerful thing. And it's not just in recovery, you know, like it's not just with living a life of sobriety. This is how, like, we can really become the masters of self, regardless of, you know, addiction, mental health issues, family issues, all sorts of things that we felt were unchangeable are actually within our control. Like, I'm a big proponent of choice theory, which is a very, say, old version of counseling. As you're going through your coaching, you're probably exposed to a lot of different theories of counseling or theories of coaching. Choice theory is a very old one. And when I was in school, I was like, this actually makes sense to me. Like, there are always choices that are out before me. And I always felt like I had to make a certain choice, right? Think like a shame narrative is in the back of my head.
Hmm.
And I don't want to reach out to a certain person because I feel like, oh, if I just reach out, I'm going to be rejected, says my shame narrative. But that's still a choice that I'm making to entertain that experience.
Hmm.
The other side, I could reach out to this person and accept that this person doesn't have to like me right off the bat. This person doesn't have to connect to me in the ways that I want to be connected to. I already am doing that myself. So, like, choices are always at our disposal, and the choices that we make put us on a certain trajectory. We actually have much more, you know, control, right? Like, control is always this taboo in the circles,
Mm-hmm.
but we do have a way of influencing that when we're in our frontal lobes, when we know what is going on inside here. We get so much better choice. We get so many avenues to explore. And you know what? Maybe we'll learn down the road, like, I made a bad choice or I made the wrong choice. Just course correct, like, let's get back onto where we want to go, right?
Yeah, I love the use of the word choice there, especially when like if I make a bad choice. Because if I make a
Mm,
bad choice, well, then I still have the choice to realize and see, hey, that was a bad choice. Let me recorrect.
hmm
Like, me and my sponsor talk a lot. Like, all right, man, you're gonna go have an experience with that, and then
I
I
love
get to
that.
choose
Yeah.
what I do on the other side of that. Like, okay, yeah, that choice didn't work, reaching out to that person. Maybe I said too much in a message to somebody, which I tend to do. I've found that, like, a lot of addicts, especially love and sex and love addicts, we tend to over explain ourselves
Mm,
instead of keeping it simple when, like, maybe next time, instead of like a, hey, I really like what you're putting out there and I really want to get to, like, maybe just say, hey, I like what you got going on, you want to grab some coffee, like, like those kinds of experiences. Like, I have the choice to look back and say, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't handle that the best way, no need to shame or guilt myself about it, but what can I do differently the next time? And I think that that's where the community comes into play too, is like having people that I can throw these things to, and then they're going to be like, all right, well, I heard you there, maybe try it this way differently next time.
right, right. The other thing to that too, man, is just like, you still get a choice in how you interpret an experience as
Mm,
well.
mm,
Like, shame, I'm really interested in shame too. I do think shame is also part of this matrix, right? Where, like, I can choose something, right? And I could experience the consequences, pro or negative, behind that, but I still have the ability to interpret that and create a meaningful experience that still benefits me, like creating a relationship, like, I'm going to send out all these messages, or a lot of words in these messages, right? If I step back and sort of understand and interpret that from say, a positive lens, I can still learn from that experience. I
mm-hmm.
could still feel maybe some of the hurt if that person's not necessarily, wanting to be in a relationship with me, or the relationship's going in a different direction, right? Like, I can still maintain a positive mindset around um, these experiences, and that's still within my choice, right? Like,
Yeah.
shame and addiction shut down choice. It shuts down that ability to hold that place of, like, self-love or self-compassion or understanding or even positive learning, you know like, to make meaning is still part of choice. right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I get to say what that meaning is. And I can even incorporate some of the heavier things to that with like the use of ands, like if you remember, I'm a really big guy about like using ands when
Yep.
it comes to holding a lot of different experiences together. Like I can be grateful that this thing has happened and sad that this thing has happened together. But like when we start to rely on like the shame narratives and addiction, that ability gets really shut down. It's like I did that thing again, because I'm such a bad person. I did that thing again because all bad things happened to me, or like I'm worthless, or I'm a burden. All those negative shame narrative pile up, and it makes it really, really hard for people to realize, like, I'm actually, this is a heavy one, I'm actually choosing to breathe energy into that. I have to make a choice, not based on maybe external factors on that one, but I have to look inside and find that positive connection place. And I really feel like when we make that choice, the circuits connect
Yeah.
and the whole circuit board starts to light up in the ways that it needs to and should, you know? So, like, I always believe in the power of choice, man, and like when guys come through our program, it really feels like defeating or shameful or even exciting, or even hopeful. All the whole feelings wheel can happen for these guys, but like the feeling of choice feels diminished or sometimes robbed, and it's so powerful to work with people to bring them back into I can make a choice, you know, I can be that person that I've always needed. And it's not like I have to construct this person out of thin air. I'm just returning to that person that's always inside of me, that trauma buried or life circumstances buried, right? So, like, I really believe in choice. I really, truly do.
Yeah. And there's power in choice too, like
Oh, yeah.
empowerment. Whereas before, maybe I feel like I couldn't make the right choices.
Mm,
Whereas, like, which going back to kind of what you said, like it's always been in me. However, it was just so deeply buried under shame and guilt and all these other old tapes that once you kind of start
mm,
pulling those out and cutting out the stuff, you're then like, okay, I've been this all along. I've always had a choice. Now I was caught up in a pursuit that was so deep that I didn't know what was really going on with me. Now that I know, and now that I see that I have a choice, and okay, every day I have a choice to wake up and do the next right thing, and
love that.
every time you do that, you just build confidence in yourself, and I always tell guys, like, when I'm in that spot, like, check in with me tomorrow because tomorrow may look a little differently.
Right. But the thing is, if tomorrow looks differently, you know how to deal with
Yeah.
it. Like
Mm-hmm.
choice is cool,
Yeah.
and we could talk about like you're making these choices, right? And there's still like what improves choice, what the equation of like choice really, really hinders on is the awareness that you have. Like, I need to know what is going on. I need to keep my frontal lobe turned on as long as possible. And what our program does and what you've experienced, what I've experienced in my own therapy is like therapy is the thing that creates the awareness that improves our choices. If I'm aware of why I think that I'm a burden, and I've done the work to heal those parts of me that felt like a burden and actually brought clarity to that, perspective to that, and healing to that, right? Now, every time that I feel like these old tapes come up, it's like, oh, I know what's going on. I
Yeah.
know what outside of me is reminding me that there's some pain there. I can choose to embrace this pain,
Mm-hmm.
learn from the pain, and even nurture that part of me. Or I can choose to avoid that. I can choose to avoid that sort of cluster of pain. And ultimately, sadly, that creates a lot of suffering, the longer I tend to avoid that type of pain. And then my my addiction comes in or other negative coping patterns come in, and that just reinforces the whole belief system of why I didn't want to approach that in the first place. So like I'm always of this belief, that awareness creates choice.
Mm,
But I need to choose to improve my awareness into things. And that is a painful choice, like it is painful to be in therapy
yeah.
sometimes. And it could truly be empowering, it could truly be enlightening, it truly be connecting, and it can truly be nurturing and all at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
Like I've been talking to a lot of guys about this, interesting enough, about accepting one's pain and then choosing to nurture it, like when we were younger people even, and this goes for older folks too, and traumas happen at all ages, right? But like we were taught to avoid the pain, so it never felt nurtured. There's a part of us that exists inside that just never got the nurturing that it needed to heal. Like if I break my arm and I go to the hospital, I'm expecting to set my arm, like that's healing to me. The same interesting idea comes up with piece of like our emotions or our psyche or even our soul that get hurt, right? We take it upon ourselves to use shame sometimes to like, hey, I want to heal this. I'm going to avoid those situations that hurt me. And I'm just going to keep hurting the hurt spot. My shame is like, I broke my arm, so I'm going to try to heal it or try to take care of it by keep breaking it. It's going to eventually just become numb, right?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
like, choosing one's pain, choosing to heal it and nurture it, it has some consequences, and those consequences could be beautiful. Those consequences could be grateful and filled with like a healing sort of experience behind that. Or, right, choice can lead us down to continuing to hurt us, continuing to break that arm in that same spot so it just goes numb.
Mm.
And then it's like, cool, my arm's numb. I can keep walking around. I don't feel that pain until the numbness wears off. And then, boom, I'm back into that pain again. So I just like the power of choice, and the power of awareness is something that just really helped me, in my experiences in my journey, and like being able to share that with people, it's just like healing to those parts of me too, and you're coaching now, man, so you're experiencing that too, of like I get to be with a person that some way shape or form reminds me of me,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and I get to be that person that I always needed for this person in front of me. And we can't travel back in time, but it feels like we're talking to ourselves, you know? So I don't know if you ever feel that, but like that's certainly my mentality on why counseling is so powerful, why healing is so powerful, and why recovery is so powerful.
Yeah. There's a couple things you said in there that gave me some reminders of like, so I recently read, I guess not recently, within the last 6 months, a book called Whatever Arises, Love That by Matt Kahn.
It's in my reading list. I listened to one of your podcasts. I put it in my to
Yeah,
Audible wish list.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my therapist recommended that book to me, and it was a really good book. Now, for me, it's still a practice, right? I can't sit here and say that like, but it's a really good reminder of like, because anxiety, I deal with anxiety a lot, and so when anxiety comes up, I have the choice to either love it or push it.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to embrace that part of me and love that part of me, because I know that through all the work that I've done, all of these wounded parts that come up with these, uncomfortable emotions, it's there for a purpose. It's there to tell me something's going on and that I need to listen to it. And of course, in my mind, I want it to be like, okay, I have this blueprint here, and okay, when I'm feeling anxious, I need to do A, B, C, D, and then I'm good. Whereas sometimes it is just like I need to sit and say, Alex, I love this part of you. I love that anxious little part of you. I love that part of you. Like, this is a part of me. I don't want to reject it, because then I'm just living in constant rejection. of myself because I'm constantly rejecting myself because I'm
Mm,
rejecting those parts. So again, not a perfect practice for me, but it's like just that reminder of like, there's times where I just gotta love it. Hey, I love you, and just sit there for 2 minutes. Hey, I love you. I love you. I love this part of you. But yeah, it's a really good book though. It's a really good book.
I'll get, I want to get into it, man. And like, you're touching on something pretty powerful in that too, is like learning to listen to your body and your emotions because they're very valuable when you can interpret them, and self love aids in that. But like, trauma really teaches us to disconnect from the body, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if I have to feel this, I don't want to feel this anymore. So if I can learn or like tell myself a story that aids me in disconnecting from my body, I don't have to deal with the things in there. And then I get triggered by things, or my midbrain activates again, and then now I'm acting out, I'm dysregulated, I'm defensive, I'm projective. A lot of negative things happen because I just cannot communicate to myself. I can't be the pilot of this ship. And it does take practice. Self love is a practice. All these things are a practice because essentially in your brain, you're trying to keep neurons awake and alive, and it's kind of like neurons are moths to a flame, so if you keep
Mm.
a shame narrative alive, all the neurons just keep, trying to go towards that light in your brain. And affirming discussions with self or like self love, it does turn on another part of the brain. But if that light doesn't stay on, those neurons don't recognize that
Mm.
light. And so they don't end up building a pathway to it. They don't create a sustainable sort of experience. That's why, like with choice, sometimes one choice is going to, make a really, really big difference. Think about just one choice of going to treatment, huge
Yeah.
difference in that. Sometimes when it comes to like, self love and sort of the compassion, we need to keep that light on,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's going to be very, very hard to keep that light on. But the more often that we keep it on, this other light doesn't stay on, it diminishes in intensity, and eventually the neurons are like, hey, this doesn't really work too often. So maybe we make this side a little bit more efficient. Maybe we build a pathway there, because the light's on. Let's just make it more efficient. So, like, it is a practice, and we have to embrace a practice. We're not always going to be perfect at the first thing, that we try.
Yep.
We want to,
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
really do. It'd be
I want
awesome,
to. Yep.
Um, if I could just go into like one counseling session and I'm like, neat, this is, I slam dunk that. I'm cured, I'm good. But you have to remember this is kind of like riding a bike,
Mm-hmm.
you have to take it in stages, and eventually when that sort of safe place is left and the training wheels come off, everybody's going to fall, everybody's going to get hurt, but we keep doing that. We keep making those choices that we know are rooted in our health, we that are rooted in an immutable sort of experience of love, that then makes it easier to get back up and get back up and get back up. It's so scary when we're little,
Mm.
and traumas are following us and we're really stuck in ourselves, and we might not have emotional safety in our families or emotional attunement in our families, or sometimes our families are the ones that hurt us, that we sort of lose this willingness to keep going or keep trying or keep making these choices. And eventually, a shame narrative comes and replaces that, or something different comes and replaces that. But it's just such a powerful experience, man, to see people recognize, like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Let me keep this side on, and if I keep returning to this side, eventually it gets easier. Choices become habits, and then habits one day become character,
Mm.
but we have to continue to make choices in order for all that line to start to build up over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like weightlifting, right? Like you don't go in there and
Yeah.
you don't just start off curling 50 pounders. You got to start with the lighter weight to build up that muscle, and then you can get to that. And that's what, to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's recovery. Recovery, that mental reps to strengthen those mental muscles. I think one thing that you'll get a kick out of, and I'm sure you've heard me share this, but like I've taken the feeling wheel into the treatment center with me. Hey guys, I just want to take a minute to share something deeply personal and transformative in my journey of recovery. I've been where you might be right now, struggling with the weight of addiction and feeling lost. But there's a place that offered me a new beginning, a place I truly believe in. It's called Begin Again Institute. At Begin Again, they understand the deep rooted trauma behind addiction. Their 14-day intensive program for men tackles the neurobiological aspects of addiction head on. It's not just about breaking a habit, it's about understanding and healing the underlying trauma that formed it in the first place. And for those who have been impacted by betrayal, Begin Again extends care to partners of addicts too. Their partner support program is offered at no additional cost to the family and runs alongside the men's intensive. This program helps participants gain an understanding of the trauma they've experienced and sets them on their own path to healing. If you or someone you love are grappling with sexual addiction, pornography addiction, or intimacy issues, Begin Again Institute can be that pivotal step towards recovery and a new lease on life. Remember, you can't go back and change the past, but it's never too late to begin again. To learn more about their life-changing program, visit beginagaininstitute.com or call 720-776-9076 to reserve your spot in the next 2-week intensive. I promise, it'll be the best call that you ever make for yourself. Stay strong, keep fighting, and keep tuning in to No Lions Here for more conversations about recovery, resilience, and hope. And
That's
I
good.
am known as the feeling wheel guy. Um,
You got your coaching name now,
Dude,
man.
I've made so many copies of that feeling wheel, Nate. I've made so many copies of it, man, and that's what we do. We start every one of my groups. We all go around and we name 3 feelings, and then I have them close their eyes and we go inside and we look at that feeling. And we look at it. We look at sensations. Where am I feeling this in the body? Is there a color? Is there a shape involved with it? You know, I share inner child stuff with them, and
Oh, cool.
it's like, and it's a good reminder because these are the things that I need to be doing for myself. And so, okay, I need to take my own advice here, and I need to apply this to my life as well. So, yeah, man, and so when people leave, they'll hit me up and they'll be like, "I still got my feeling wheel, Alex. I still got my
Nice.
feeling wheel." I'm like, "Good, I still got mine." So keep it up,
It's
man.
such a valuable tool, brother.
Such a
It's such a valuable tool, and it's so simple,
so simple.
but it's like, this is true for a lot of people. Everybody is like searching for a tool, of like, how do I use this? What do I do with it? And like, it's that feelings wheel is just like a readily accessible way of digesting what is going on inside you in any given moment. And like, it's so neat for you to be using that and spreading what you know to have been helpful for you, to other people that you encounter. That's the gift of recovery, and that's the gift of healing, is like it's spreadable. Like it translates, and it's like, hey, I do this, I use this tool, you should try it. Oh yeah, this actually is awesome. This is a good tool, you know? Like I've had guys who in the past have been like, I use this for my kids, and my kids now are more emotionally fluent with how they're experiencing themselves, and they can talk to me using this feelings wheel. And then dad, or whatever identity that your listeners have, can be like, hey, I can tell you how I feel about this thing. Like, think about growing up. Like, how do sometimes parents portray their emotions?
Mm-hmm.
Like, anger or sadness or fear is this big, 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 big thing, but it doesn't have to be. If we're regulated and we can talk about how we feel, we can stay regulated and use the feelings wheel and say, hey, I'm feeling really angry. This is where I'm at right now. And then kids or other, say, partners can have something tangible that they can see, you know? So it's so neat that you're using that, man. That's awesome. Really
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm not surprised as to why you guys gave it to us, you know, and realizing too that it's a I've found that it's a trailhead. right? Like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm feeling anxious. Okay, that's where I need to start. That's where I need to explore, and I share this all. It's like, hey, feelings wheel gives us a good idea of what we can do for ourselves to help ourselves. What? Okay, I'm feeling lonely. All right, well, what do we, I know we need connection. Then I'm feeling anxious. What helps me work through that or regulate that anxiety? So I always tell them, like, the feelings wheel shows us where to start, and then from there you get to explore. So you get to go
Oh,
inside and you get to explore what it is that's going on, and you get to kind of get in there, get curious. Like, get curious, no judgments there. Like, get curious with it. Why is this popping up? You can talk to these feelings, you can talk to these parts, and they'll talk back to you.
isn't that
It
neat? Like
is.
it's awareness creates choice.
Mm,
Like I'm aware of how I'm feeling. I have a choice,
yeah.
you know. And you're actually like that's another tool I really like to help people with is like developing curiosity again. Like it's a very very much so, like our curiosity is very much so a childlike part inside of
Mm-hmm.
us. Like if you think back to when you were young or your listeners were young, it's like everything is new, everything is unknown, right? And like curiosity changes over time, especially in our society where it's just like I can look something up in a moment, and like know a full dictionary term of what I'm looking at, right? But it's not based in how you're perceiving it. It's being interpreted through another medium, right?
Yeah.
So like curiosity is the one of the best tools, to use in conjunction with like things with like the feelings wheel. It's like if I'm curious about say how my partner is bringing up some betrayal from 10 years ago, right? I have a choice in that. Do I say, gosh, this was 10 years ago, why are you bringing this up, and I deflect, I minimize or invalidate? Or do I stay curious, why is this coming up right now? How can I attune to this in this moment? Is this different than it was 10 years ago? Like all that starts to fuel our awareness. It starts to fuel our choice. We get better attunement through that. We get better presence through that. We get better understanding through that. And ultimately, all that drives us to deeper, more intimate relationships with people we care about. So it's like you're hitting the nail on the head with that, man. Like curiosity is such a human, just powerful experience. And I think we all need, more of it.
Yeah, and how that curiosity strengthens the relationship with myself. Like, because now I'm really getting a chance to go inside and learn about myself, right? Like, whereas before I didn't like myself enough to go in and explore. I was like, no, there's nothing but locked doors and cobwebs in there. I'm not going in there. Whereas now with that curiosity, I get to go in and learn about who's Alex. What does Alex want? How does Alex operate? How does Alex want love? How does Alex want to give love? How, what does Alex like to do for fun? Like, what I get to go in and create that intimate relationship with myself. And I think, and like, so whenever we were emailing about what we were going to potentially talk about, I brought up dating, right? Because I'm like, all right, like it's been 3.5 years, like let's try this. However, I'm looking back. I was telling a buddy on the phone today, like I'm so happy that I waited
Mm,
these 3.5 years before I seriously was like, okay, I'm gonna actually try dating. Now, don't get me wrong, like I've been on some dates, but I was going about it the wrong way. But just over that time, here's time again. Um, I've been able to learn so much about myself, and I have an intimate relationship with myself, so I have a better understanding of who I am, so that then I can be more mindful in sharing who I am, because I know how I need to share myself with somebody. And so that curiosity has just fueled that intimate relationship with myself, to where I can be really mindful when going into this murky unknown water. Because we were talking about before we jumped on, I'm like, this is the first time I've ever sober dated before, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
like I told you, man, I don't think there's ever a way to know what you're doing
Yeah.
when it comes to the world of dating, man. It's it's hard, it's really difficult to kind of know, like, where am I in this? What are they feeling about me? Is this hot? Is this cold? Am I misperceiving things? Am I right on the money, with this? And so, like, getting to know yourself is like the first and foremost most important thing when it comes to dating. Like, we were chatting a little bit before this podcast and talking about like being in a relationship with yourself,
Mm,
before you start to explore relationships with others, right? Is the most important thing. Like, you and that relationship that you have with you is the single most important relationship that you will ever be a part of, in perpetuity, and like knowing you, loving you, knowing you, like trusting you, being in an intimate place with you, you get to share that with every single relationship that you encounter, and that way, like when you are full, you're like in that space of like, wholeness, right? Like you're not looking for somebody else to feel something that you're perceiving to be lacking,
mm-hmm,
like too often do people go into the dating world trying to find that person that is like, that's my missing piece,
mm,
and it's just popularized in our culture of like, oh, you're my missing piece here, you complete me, like I think that's a Jerry Maguire quote, you complete me, right? And it's so like it's a romantic gesture,
mm-hmm,
right? But really I think what we're looking for is somebody that is like a mirror to us,
mm,
that challenges us with not just um like intimacy, but like challenges us, pushes us, like can show us a blind spot, and we can trust in that. We can trust what another people or person is saying to us and be like, you know what? Let me curiosity again, let me be curious about this. How can I take that feedback and connect to that and make changes that I might need to make? You know, we were talking a little bit earlier too, man, about like the importance of self love and things like that. But, in the dating world, there are always going to be risks to that,
mm-hmm, yeah,
like we'll never know if somebody might hurt us either tomorrow, the next day, 10 years from now, 40 years from now, right? Like there's always a risk to entering into any relationship.
mm-hmm,
But there is a relationship that doesn't really carry a risk. This is a risk free relationship, which is self love. Like self love carries no risk to it, you know? We have to accept like sometimes our choices hurt that, right? But like when we're in a relationship to ourselves and we built it upon self-love, there's no risk to that,
yeah,
like when you trust you, when you're intimate with you and you're reliant on you, right? You're not going to hurt yourself unless you try,
yeah,
right? Unless your shame narrative is just saying you're no good, right? And then it's free game, like you're going to go to the shooting range, but like I really truly believe when it comes to dating in particular, right? You have to be in a relationship with you,
yeah,
and that is shared with people that you come across, and then we find our mirror self in that.
yeah. That's yeah, yeah. Because like it's vulnerable to put yourself out there, and like I find myself like because there's I, the intent of dating for me right now is to get to know somebody and let somebody get to know me. It's not, hey, am I going to get into a relationship with this person? Am I going to get physical with this person? It's, hey, let's connect. And there's anxiety there though because I'm sharing these parts of me not all at once. Right now I'm looking back at some of my old patterns of like my old pattern is how quickly can I just divulge and disclose everything to you so that you can either sit here and go yes or no, right? There's control in that. Like I just want to know, right? Whereas now it's more like, nope, I'm not. I'm actually going to take my time sharing this stuff with you because not everybody deserves to know and hear my full story. So okay, let me. But there's little things that sharing that it's kind of like you share that and you kind of sit back and you're like, all right, what are they gonna think about that? Like, oh, because and this is my challenge is there's issues, there's things, there's situations. So like I still live with my mom. I'm gonna use this as an example. I still live with my mom, and I view that in my head shameful. I'm a 35-year-old man. I live with my mom, right? That's in my head, and society has really glorified independence and like moving out. And if you look at other cultures actually like really stay tight knit, and you eventually move out of your parents' house only to have them move right back in with you, to take care of them. And so I get to push back against like I think that someone else wouldn't approve of it when really that's just because I don't approve of it. And that I've brought this up and people are like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh, wait. Oh, I thought that was going to be the red flag that you ran from. But really, you're like, yeah, no, it's all good. Like, people are way more understanding than sometimes I am to myself.
It's huge, man, because it's you project your
Mm,
insecurities onto another person, and it's like a thought projection, in the field is like I am just going to assume, that you're already going to reject me, or judge me or criticize me because I'm actually the one judging, criticizing, or rejecting myself, right? And like if I make the choice to entertain in that narrative, right, it's going to influence my behaviors. I might not be so adventurous. I might not be so daring. I might play it more safe, right? And then I might miss an opportunity to really connect with somebody, deeply, emotionally, vulnerably, right?
yeah.
Because I'm so wrapped up in the internal narrative that I'm so scared that people are going to come up with that, and then reject me because of that, right?
Yeah.
But largely what you're connecting to, man, is like that's your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That might not be another person's narrative, right? But like when you make that choice, sometimes it does keep you safe, right? If you don't risk anything, then you might
Mm,
not get hurt. And then that sort of reinforces it in your brain of like, this is why I didn't take that chance, right? I didn't reach out to that person, even if I felt really strong connection to it, right? And then I just end up connecting to something harmful or hurtful inside of me. And then I give that reality. I give that weight behind that, in my mind. So like
mm,
being vulnerable to self and like trusting that that will be enough for any relationship is crucial when it comes to dating. Like a big sort of thing that a lot of people in recovery have to encounter is how do I talk about being in
mm,
recovery, you know?
mm-hmm.
And like it's different for, say, maybe, alcohol or gambling or other process addictions, right? Because it's not so heavily stigmatized,
Yeah. It's almost
like
celebrated.
sex addiction carries a very, very heavy, stigma to it. And like being able to open up to a person around that is a very big risk. It's a scary one, scary, scary. That's why being in relationship with yourself and trusting, like, hey, I might not be able to connect to this person, when I'm this vulnerable, I'm going to be okay. And I have to accept that that person is making that choice, not because it's a rejection of me, it's because they are carrying a weight of maybe their own personal history, they're carrying the weight of societal pressure or, influence in that, and they're going to choose what they feel is best in a partner. And that is not a reflection on you. You do that person the service of being honest and open. That's what anybody wants in a relationship, you know? And I have met some of the best people in relationship who struggle with sex addiction because when they're in recovery, they know how valuable being honest is. They know how valuable being intimate and authentic is. And so, look, those people make the best partners because they know what is at stake. They know how to be vulnerable without it like impacting them, like their shame narratives and things like that, you know? So, like, when it comes to dating, I think the best policy is true across the board, whether you're in addiction or not, when you're in recovery or not. It's being real with somebody
Yeah.
and accepting that your realness might have consequences to it, right? But those consequences could be really, really positive, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I am treating you with respect. I am treating you with kindness. I'm treating you with authenticity. Here is me. Here is who I am. And when you do that, you actually get to control that narrative for a person, not in a negative sense, but like you get to destigmatize your own experience and all of that. This is who I am. I'm in recovery. I'm proud of my recovery. I trust myself, you know? So then it sort of counters, right, other sort of stigmas that exist in the field or exist in relationships, right?
Yeah.
You get to put yourself on that place of I'm a healed person and I continue to heal. And I'm so proud of that fact that I want you to know, right? Because intimacy matters to me and I want to be authentic in all of that. It carries a weight, right? It's super scary to do. But when you do that, you actually find people that respect that, want to be with that, connect to that. If you hide it, if you minimize it or you shame it, right? There's a chance that you encounter somebody that might not be okay with that.
Yeah.
And then down this hill you go, down the stairs you fall.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about like owning it too that
Mm.
like, hey, like, I'm trying to think how I want to say this. Like, it's almost like I'm not sharing it to either get your approval or disapproval. I'm sharing it because I want to be honest and open with you. And that, like, that's me owning it instead of trying to put it on a platter and go, well, tell me what you think about that? Like, almost like a little boy taking something to mom, going, mom, I want to show you something. I want to show you something. Um, yeah, I don't know if that made any sense at all. Like, owning
Crystal,
it,
man.
like, yeah, and not, I'm not telling you this because, yeah, yeah, like,
Yeah, you're not trying to tell that person, you know, like with any like expectations of like, you know, I'm not trying to get something from you, you know, like I want to be upfront and open and honest from the get go, you know? And then when that foundation is set, right? Like trust can be
yeah,
built, you know, authenticity can be built within the coupleship itself.
yeah,
And then people start to rely on that, right? Like, it's just a scary thing that anybody, you know, who starts to date, who's carrying any type of addiction, you know, and like is in the recovery place, right? It's confronting the fear. And instead of like treating your fear as an adversary, it's really much more like a friend.
yeah,
You know, your fear when it comes to like dating or starting a new relationship is just trying to be your friend. That's why being in charge, you know, frontal lobe regulation, I'm aware that I'm afraid. I know that I'm going to take a risk in this. You still have you in all of that.
yeah,
You know, people still have themselves in that. When you get to share that with another person and it's mirrored to you, you have a deeper connection.
yeah,
You have the intimacy that all people want to share in their relationships. You know, all people want a deep, intimate, emotionally bonded, you know, relationship because that's how we're hardwired.
yeah,
If you start that from the get go, you know, like I don't think date one, you know, you're sitting down and like, hey, you know, here's what you're working with, you know, like that, you know, but like being like building that up,
yeah,
you know, and allowing your personality and who you are to do the talking, right? And then leading into that place, right? That sort of shows a person who you are at your core. This is who I am, you know,
yeah,
and in my opinion, you know, like doing that sooner in the start of the relationship creates that more positive outcome for people. You know, it's a big, scary leap,
Yeah.
right? And it has the, all the things that people want in a relationship. That sort of like, it starts that fire,
Yeah.
and it brings people closer.
Yeah. It's you bring that up, and I've because I've toyed, I've like, this has been like an ongoing like conflict in my head of like, so I'm pretty quick to be like, hey, I'm in 12 step recovery. Especially with the career that I'm about to get into, like, people ask me, oh, what do you do for work? Oh, well, I'm actually getting ready to go work at a treatment center. Oh, well, what got you into that? Oh, well, I'm in 12 step recovery myself. I'm pretty open about that. Not so much the nitty gritty details of like, hey, I'm a sex addict and like this is I'm
Mm,
pretty open about the 12 step recovery. And it's not a lie. I'm not lying to anybody. But it definitely is that like, all right, when do you, and I know that there's no like concrete answer. I know that I don't want to wait till 6 months to say I meet somebody. I don't want to wait 6 months. And I think that this is where like my program comes into play, my higher power comes into play. Like, because again, nobody can sit here and tell me, all right, Alex, the perfect algorithm for when to tell somebody that you're a sex addict is date 3 an hour and a half into the date, and then you're good to go. I'm curious to see what you think about this. Is I was talking to a program friend, a close program friend of mine, throughout all of this stuff, and he was like, because I am very very open. I'm in 12 step recovery. I'm spiritual. I'm active. I'm looking for somebody that's also open to spirituality and active and has a support network. And by sharing these things, I realize that I have a lot to offer, and that I can offer myself up so that then it gets to that point where I had a buddy tell me, he was like, Alex, if you openly and honestly share yourself, the good person that you are, by the time it gets to that conversation that, hey, I need to bring up that I'm a sex addict, this person's already going to be invested in you, to where maybe this thing won't be a deal breaker if it's the right person.
when it comes to that, man, like your awareness is going to tell you when a relationship's starting to deepen,
Mm,
you know?
mm-hmm,
Like when you start to pick up, like, I'm really connecting to this person, like I'm really excited by this person and I really feel intimately connected and drawn to who this person is. That's the time to start to consider, like, I need to take that next step of intimacy, in me to let this person know, like I am in recovery. I am in recovery for an intimacy disorder. And this is, how I work my program. This is what's important to me. This is what I value, right? And it has a lot to do just when you phrase it, like you said, there might not be a perfect moment, like an algorithm that says like hour and a half into your third date, oh no, you missed your hour and a half, like now you're at 140, it's going to blow up, but it's how you phrase it, of
mm,
saying just with honesty, like, hey, I notice that we're getting really, really close here, and I really, really value this relationship, and I would want to continue to pursue this more intimately, and I want you to know something very intimate to me. I'm going to be authentic with you about this thing, and I'm not holding you to a certain choice. This is just who I am. And I want you to know me inside and out as we continue in on this, right? And then that person has the ability to know, like, hey, this is going to be maybe very important conversation for us to have, right? And then if you and that person are connecting in that way, right, then it gives that person more choice too.
mm,
You know, it's all about choices. And if I can bestow an intimate choice for this person, then they're making a fully informed choice. A lot of what happens betrayal, right, is that there's been lies or gaslighting or things like that, and so people have to confront, Maybe you weren't real from the beginning. And, people who've been betrayed, that's a big, big, big piece of
Yeah.
pain, you know? And if you're upfront from that beginning and yes, accept that maybe that person, doesn't want to continue in that relationship, it's not because of
Mm.
you, it's because that person is taking a choice.
Yeah.
And then you get the ability to make the experience meaningful. I'm proud of myself for being that ultra honest and rigorously honest from the beginning. I accept that this hurts. I accept that I was really caring about this person, and I can be present to that pain and not try to minimize it, hide it, change it, right? Because I'm nurturing that. I'm choosing to nurture my hurt and pain over that. Then you might find people who are like, I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah.
Let's continue in this because I feel really connected to you too. Then you figure out who the people who are going to be there for you and who you're going to be there for in return, right?
Yeah.
That's a deepening experience. You know, it takes risk, right? There's always going to be a risk of pain to every relationship you're going to be in.
Yeah.
But when you're in relationship to self, you can take care of that. You don't have to beat yourself over the head and be like, see, this is why I'm so bad, and bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
Then it makes it easier to keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up a good point there around like if because I have a problem with rejection. I
Mm,
make it all about me. Oh, she didn't want to go on another date with me because I'm not good enough. And what I will say with me, with where I'm at today, is I have more grace for myself around that and grace for them and say, hey, like, no, it didn't work out because it wasn't supposed to work out. It wasn't because of me. I don't know fully what they're dealing with. Maybe we've only had a couple conversations. Maybe we've only gone on one date. I really don't know them. It's not me. It's not me. It's they got other stuff going on and it just wasn't meant to be.
mm,
And that
yeah,
helps me move through that. Whereas in the past, I would go to that beating myself. Oh, wow, I can't believe, oh, you're such a terrible person. Like, it's so easy for me to buy into those because I'm not far from those at any given time. But yeah, I have noticed that like I'm a little bit more graceful for myself in that aspect of like, yeah, that just wasn't supposed to work out. That person wasn't a good fit for me, and that's okay.
yeah, man, it makes sense because that rejection narrative puts that pain back into your control,
Mm,
right? It hurts less when I just blame myself for it, right? Like shame or rejection narratives, like internal judgment, criticism. It's about taking a painful experience and instead of sitting with it, it mutates, right? It becomes a known story. And if I know this story and I blame myself, eventually I can make that pain go away, numb it out or change it, whatever it looks like. I sort of gain control over that pain, in some kind of weird sort of
mm,
ideal of the word, right? I choose to hurt myself instead of accepting that another person hurt me or like this experience was hurtful, right? It's about control. It's about creating a story that you already know instead of inhabiting an unknown story where you don't know how it ends, right? Shame, rejection, isolation, internal judgments, criticism. You know how the story ends. We all do because these are the stories we've grown up with. And when we give those stories attention and validation and reality, right? Things that happen to us just go right into the story. They go right into that story, and it's like, cool, I know how this story ends. I've already read this book, right? Move on, right? Ignore your feelings, disconnect from your body, and go seek out your self soothing. Addiction, aka, like all these things start to just spiral back out. Um, but like those rejection narratives, right? They come into play a lot in the world of dating. And we have to accept and move through that pain. Again, relationship with self, we have to move through the pain of those old wounds in order for us to discover, like, I can deal with that pain. It's not a true rejection of me, it's a different choice. And it hurts. It really hurts, but it's not because I'm not worthy. It's not because I'm unlovable. It's not because I'm, a piece of garbage or something like that. It's just because somebody chose differently. And it just hurts.
Mm.
It just hurts.
When you bring that up, it's like it circles me back to like the familiar. Like I'm so familiar in this pain. I'm so
Yeah.
familiar when I play the victim because that justifies whatever I need to use to self-soothe myself. When I'm the victim, I can justify and rationalize the old ways of soothing myself.
Yeah. And it displaces the pain that you're experiencing. It removes your choice,
Mm.
right? Victims feel like they don't have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
choice. And especially when we're self-victimizing it, like it removes our ability to choose something, right? And it just creates the familiar story again. And it's like, we're talking about, it's like, I know how this book
Yep.
ends. So let me just go. Like, let me just get out of here. Let me escape into addiction. Let me escape into other maladaptive forms of coping. Let me just get out of me. And if we do this enough times, a lot of people will just seek out oblivion, you know like, let me just turn my addiction to 11 and, like, let me just either binge out or, like, just throw everything away, because, like, I just don't care anymore. I just want that oblivion. Then we just wake back up and we're stuck. We're stuck in that pain again. And now we've just added a whole heaping load of more pain or more shame. And then it just we're talking about rock bottom at the
Yeah.
beginning of this, man. Like, that just pushes our rock bottom further, and it's like, cool, I'll just keep digging.
Yeah. Yeah. God, there was a point in time where I loved digging. But
Me
now
too,
I have
man.
the
Me too.
choice that I don't have to dig.
And then you gotta be aware that you're in the hole in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like, it's such a powerful thing of just, I have awareness. I know that the shovel's in my hand. I know how far I've already dug, and I know that I can continue to dig. So what's my choice here?
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to put the shovel down. I'm going to start to get myself out.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I like, I noticed this the other day. I was having a really hard time. I was talking to my sponsor, and I was having a really hard time, like voicing exactly what I was feeling, or I just was like, I just feel I'm just kind of and I thought that that was a good enough answer. And he was like, "Well, hey, man, like, because in this relationship, I have given him my shovel." So I don't want to go and dig at it necessarily. Sometimes because that can get me in trouble. But I've given him my shovel. So when I said that, and then I was like, "Well, how are you?" And he was like, "Well, hold on a second. What do you think's going on there? What do you think's going on?" And then I got to like, okay, yeah, let me think about this real quick. And okay, well, yeah. Oh, wow. I would literally was just able to throw. I emptied my mixed bag of stuff onto the table and really realized, oh wow, Alex, you're actually carrying around a lot right now. This is really good to see. But it was really cool that like he dug at it and I didn't. And that when he dug at it, I knew that I was in a loving, safe space to where I could unpack this stuff and not just get away with by saying, "Oh, I'm fine." On to the next
Mm.
thing, right? So I don't know. I thought that was really cool. Just like, again, how I need to put the shovel down and I need to give the shovel to those closest to me.
Ooh, that's a good phrase right there,
Yeah.
man. That's a juicy
That
one right
is.
there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here, take my shovel.
That's a good one
You've
liner.
got my shovel now. And then I
Yeah.
trust them when they start digging at it.
That's basically boiled down to co-regulation, man. That's
Mm,
attunement, you know.
yeah.
It's really it's attunement, right? Like, I am attuned to you, right? Like, Nate, I know that you're not just fine, and you don't have to. hold that shovel. Like, I can carry that with
Yeah.
you if you trust me with
Mm-hmm.
it. If you trust me with how you're actually feeling, you know? And like, parts of the way that we figure out who's going to help us hold that is we have to be
Yeah.
vulnerable. That is the way that we learn who's going to be there in the hole with us versus people who don't want to get down in there, maybe that are more comfortable outside of that hole, right?
Yeah.
Like, it allows us to know who is going to be there for us, and it carries that risk with
Yeah.
it. And sometimes we will get hurt, sometimes we will look into, like, please help me down here, and sometimes people won't come, you know and that's not a bad thing, right? But we have to accept, through our intimacy we do discover the people who want to be
Yeah.
intimate with us. It sounds like your sponsor is going to be there with you, man, because there's intimacy in that.
Yep.
There's co-regulation in that. There's attunement,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that co-regulation. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just such a thing, too, man, when it comes to trauma, because it's like the core tenet that a lot of addicts end up learning is like, I got to do this by
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
And if people actually saw me or knew me, they would just reject
Mm.
me, abandon me, isolate me anyway. So that really enforces this idea of like, I got to do it myself, right? And it's like, if we don't trust people with our feelings and the ways that we're actually, encountering ourselves in those moments, right? Like, we get very, very good at the it's fine,
Yeah.
like, I'm fine. Don't connect to me because I'm just going to deal with this by myself. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't trust this. This is going to just end up hurting me more. So all these negative beliefs and these core, cognitions get just programmed inside our heads. And then 50 years down the line, we're struggling because we don't feel like we can connect to ourselves or other people, and then it's fine. It's just like this big old shield that a lot of people end up
Mm.
carrying. When we actually allow the shield to drop, yeah, we're exposed, we're vulnerable, it's okay, right? But then people can finally just carry us, nurture us, see us without the armor, see inside our authentic selves. And that's a
Yeah.
gift. That's what recovery brings, that's what therapy brings. um, it's learning to do that co-regulation, like therapists, right? Like, we co-regulate,
Yeah.
coaches co-regulate, you know like, what a person says and experiences impacts us. So like, if you are a client of mine, man, and you tell me it's fine, I'm like, yo, man, look, it's not fine, because like, I could feel that in my body, but like, until we're like connected to that again, we'll be like, neat, you're fine. All right. Take
Yeah.
care. See you next week.
Yeah. Anytime anybody throws that word at me, fine. And when I ask them how I'm doing, I'm like, what's really going on there?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, all right, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, because I know if I ever say it, I'm not fine at all. No, no,
Yeah.
no, and it's funny though too, Nate, because like I know the co-regulation, I know what the benefit that I have from it, and I'm still surprised to this day where like I'll be having a day and I'm in that kind of that just that kind of that funky mood. I'm kind of in that 4 or 5 area and I can't really pinpoint what's going on or feel that like necessarily anything big's on fire. But then I get on the phone with somebody and I start talking and I'm like, oh wow, I needed to talk about some things. I didn't realize that. I forgot how good it feels to co-regulate with somebody.
I have this like, really, like, I'm fond of this idea, of like, this is a total like co-regulation sort of thing, but it's like, sometimes we have to trust other people outside of our nervous systems to know us better than we know
Mm,
ourselves in that moment, you know? And like, it's a big leap of faith, and we can always hold counsel with ourselves or other people when it's like, hey, I got this feedback, I'm curious about it, I'm trying to understand it myself. right? And we can still hold counsel with that and be like, maybe that person doesn't, but you've digested it. You were curious about that. And most often, right, people are going to encounter us differently than we're encountering
Mm,
ourselves. And like if we learn to trust it, and just be curious about it, we don't have to adopt immediately the perspectives of other
yeah,
people in that, right? But like most often, people do have a better beat on us, especially if we're in a very midbrain place where our maybe frontal lobes aren't taking in our environments or how we're perceiving ourselves or other people, Like our frontal lobes become diminished in efficacy the longer we're in midbrain structures. So, like, if somebody's frontal lobe is turned on and we're in midbrain stuff, like that person's frontal lobe can aid us in bringing us out of midbrain back into, the smart part of the brain, right? Like, that's why therapy is so powerful, is because it's two people or multiple people that are geared towards the same goal of healing, right? And when we trust and we built up intimacy with coaches, therapists, whatever, that person's brain is connected to our brains and they're feeling what we're
yeah,
feeling. And it might not be one for one, but like if we're curious about things and, I'm posing an idea out to a client, they might be like, oh my gosh, that's actually, wow. And then it brings them out of midbrain, puts them into frontal lobe where they can take stock of like, oh, this is my denial, for example, or oh, this is how I'm actually feeling, or this is how this trauma has actually impacted me. Guess who just built up awareness? More awareness creates choice.
mm,
So co-regulation, whether it comes to dating, whether it comes to long-term relationships or just somebody you meet on the bus, right? Like it's human for us to be a part of a group and our nervous systems love it, man.
yeah,
Our nervous systems love to be in a part of a group because that's how we have historically, for generations, healed. Like addiction is the isolating force in all of this sort of nucleus, right? It says you cannot be known anymore, you cannot be acceptable by the group or by other relationships, so cut yourself off from that vital source of healing. Go and take care of yourself, self-soothe, numb, seek addiction, but you cannot be a part of that. And that isolation drives us further into the hole, keeps us digging. But we actually do heal in
yeah,
groups. There's scientific neuroscience that suggests and proven, really, like we heal optimally in a group. That's why, BAI is all about a cohort model. Like they start and finish at the same time. Like the group creates an identity, and each member of that group contributes into that collective identity. And when you all pass that finish line, there's that celebration moment. We have done
yeah,
it. We have accomplished something. We have changed individually and as a collective group. And then your brain is just like fireworks. Then the real work begins.
yeah,
I am going into these groups that I've betrayed, relationships that I've hurt, things that I haven't been present for. But the group has made you all the better to handle that.
yeah. And it all starts with a choice.
Yeah.
It all
Yeah.
starts with a
Yeah.
choice. Man. Well, Nate, man, I'm just so grateful for you and to be connected to you, and I'm just so grateful to have you as a resource for the show and to come on the platform and to share your wisdom and share the things that you've picked up along the way, man. I'm selfishly I love having you on, man. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you so much for coming on, man. I just really appreciate it. And it's funny at the beginning of the show, we were talking about like the nervousness around like I don't have any questions written down, Nate. Like this is just going to be free form. And look at this. Next thing you know, we're an hour and 17 minutes in, and we could keep going.
Yeah, man. I'd love to keep chatting with you, and I just thank you for having me on and giving me a platform and a voice to talk about something I'm
Yeah,
passionate about. Like being able to communicate to a lot of people that I've never met before. They're learning about me, they're learning about you. Like, it's a gift that I can share, and like your listeners are at all stages of your, recovery journey. They might be interested in like neuroscience or trauma, all these things. And it warms my heart to maybe think like, our conversations might have sparked something in their own awareness, you know, maybe they can make a choice now behind that. And that means the world to me, man. So just thank you for giving me that voice so I can share that
Yeah,
message.
man, no problem. And this is the first time that you've been on that we're actually going to be able to put this up on YouTube, and like we're going to be
Cool.
making some shorts out of this episode, and those are going to get blasted out. So, yeah, man, I'm excited. And again, man, just thank you. This is just such a good. I don't know, man. Again, I just having you on, I feel so safe with you and comfortable because you've been with me through some of the lowest moments of my life, and you were there for me, and you really helped me. I was thinking about this while we were talking earlier. Like, I remember being at BAI for the first time, right? Because I went to the hero's journey as well. Being at BAI, and I remember, it was a breakup. Everybody knows the Patricia story and like everything like that. And I remember I had this great idea that I'm going to write her a letter. And every day, I'm laughing now, but because I'm looking back on it, going like, "Oh my gosh, Alex!" But like, I'm gonna write a page a day, and when I get out of here, I'm gonna go deliver it to her, and woo! And I remember bringing it up to you, feeling like really like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this, Nate," and you were like, "Hold on, man, you got to ask for her permission to give her that letter," and I remember being like, "What?" What? I don't want to do that. No, I'm not. No, but like it made me think, right? And I don't know. I was just reminded of that as we were talking around, like just, but being really appreciative of that later on and looking back on that now, like yeah, that made total sense, and I totally get why you said that to me. But yet you said it to me in such like a loving and caring way that like it wasn't like, all right, screw this guy. He didn't sign off on my BS, so I'm out of here. It was like, yeah, okay. Clearly he knows what he's talking about, so I should probably listen to that. And I actually never gave her the letter. She said no.
It's all about
Yeah.
safety,
Mm-hmm.
like safety is the most important thing anybody, having a discovery needs or experiencing betrayal. And sometimes we have to just, like, if we really want something, like we have to surrender it and make a choice around it. You always have a choice
Mm.
in what you do.
Yep.
But like when we're aware of why that choice is, one, important to us, and two, how is that choice going to impact another
Mm.
person, right? Like it just develops more of connection with our ability to
Yeah.
choose. Like, I need to create safety again. Is this the safest thing that I can do for somebody that I've
Yeah.
hurt, or I've has discovered me in a
Yeah.
certain way, So like it's a heavy choice to make, and it does bring with it, some sadness to that, and it also still can create a connection
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah. You made a good point there. Like before recovery, I didn't think about the impact that my choices had on other people. It was all about
Mm.
me. I want this, so therefore this is my choice. Whereas now, I'm a little bit more mindful around how are my choices going to affect those that are closest to me.
It's just being the master of the
Yep.
ship, you know. I am the captain here,
Yep.
right? I think that's the quote. I don't
I
know,
am the
man. I was
captain
trying to
now.
work in that quote the entire session. I was like, how do I get that quote in there? you know,
Yeah.
I'm the captain now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that, Nate. Yeah. Well, hey, we got it in, man. We got it
Yeah,
in.
right at the finish line, man.
Oh man. Well, Nate, again, man. just thank you so much, man. Again, I can't thank you enough for just your willingness and the work that you're doing too, man. Like the work that you are doing is impacting so many people, man. You've made such an impact on my life and my recovery and my program, and I know that you're doing that for every other guy that you come across out there and in your own life personally too, man. I know you're making changes for people. So I just want to thank
Mm,
you and affirm what you're doing, just like the way you did for me. So thank you, Nate. Thank you for being you and doing
thank
what you
you,
do.
man. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no problem, man. If you guys want to get to know Nate a little bit more, you can always check in the Beginning and Institute out in Berthoud, Colorado. Check the description for their information. Again, Nate, thanks so much, man. I'm going to stop this recording, but I'm going to have you stay on just so that I can make sure that this gets all uploaded and everything like that. So, any words that you would like to leave the listeners with before we end things? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, I know.
I was like, how do I come up with something profound? I think it's really, you know, revolves around like maybe it's time to accept, like to make a choice and make a hard choice of going to, treatment or going to seek out some level of healing, right? It takes a choice of surrender, it takes a choice of readiness, right? And if any one of your listeners, man, is listening and feels moved by this or touched by this, right? Like that's the awareness that you need, to okay, maybe it's time, maybe I could feel inspired by this. Maybe I can go get that book that I, been told to read, or maybe I can go to a 12-step meeting, and just introduce myself on my day one, or, go to a treatment center, like it all starts with an idea, and I hope that this podcast has given your listeners ideas that then they can make choices around, so
Yeah. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate that, man. And as always, everybody, keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you're worth it. We'll see you guys next time.